It's Monday, July 17th, 2023, and we find ourselves at the California State Capitol building in downtown Sacramento. Despite it being a Monday morning, the streets of downtown are relatively quiet with the exception of the ongoing construction on the nearby Treasurer's office. Just down the street is the historic Cathedral of Blessed Sacrament, completed in 1889. It was a hot and muggy day in Sacramento at the time of our visit, with a high temperature of around 110 degrees. Just a few miles away from the Capitol building, however, along the banks of the Sacramento River, is Old Sacramento, full of old historic shops and buildings. But our main focus is the California State Railroad Museum. Housed just across the way from the former Southern Pacific Shop Complex, this museum features a plethora of rare equipment detailing California's rich railroad history, with one of the museum's centerpieces being the last surviving Southern Pacific cab forward, number 4294, built by Baldwin in 1944. Just outside is the Sacramento Southern Railroad. Owned and operated by the museum, train rides are usually operated along the 8-mile rail line. However, the line was closed at the time of our visit due to ongoing track repairs. These repairs didn't stop Amtrak Capital Corridor trains, however, as we see a few of them crossing the historic swing bridge across the Sacramento River. With this last train crossing the bridge, we now turn our attention southward to another Northern California Railroad attraction. We now find ourselves a little under 3 hours south of Sacramento in Felton, California, in a little park known as Roaring Camp. Roaring Camp is home to not one, but two scenic railroads, the standard gauge Santa Cruz Big Trees and Pacific, which runs from west to the Santa Cruz Pier, and the narrow gauge Roaring Camp and Big Trees, which will be the main focus for the rest of this video. The RC and BT operates a short 6-mile round trip from Roaring Camp to the summit of the nearby Bear Mountain and return. Both railroads are famous for operating through the gorgeous redwood forests of Northern California, with the Henry Cowell State Park Visitor Center housed just across the tracks. This railroad was founded in 1963 by F. Norman Clark and was built as a means of recreating the many logging railroads that once populated the area decades prior. The original right-of-way featured a pair of spiral wooden trestles that looped over each other. However, these trestles were destroyed in a fire in 1976. The cause of the fire is suspected to have been arson. In their place, a set of switchbacks have been put into place on the railroad and have remained there ever since. As guests stream into the park, our train for the day, headed by Shay number 1, backs into the Roaring Camp Depot, preparing for its 10:30 departure. Shortly after backing into Roaring Camp, the engine spots itself at the water tower to top off before boarding. A sea of people gather to marvel at the engine, its green and red paint shining in the early morning sun. Once the tender is topped off, the engine pulls forward again to allow for boarding. Engine number 1, better known as the Dixiana, is a two-truck Shay-type locomotive built by the Lima Locomotive Works in 1912, originally intended for use on the Alacosi Lumber Company in Conasauga, Tennessee, as their engine number 3. She was then sold to several different owners over the years, including the Tanga Lumber Company, Southern Iron and Equipment Company, the Smoky Mountain Railway, and the W.M. Ritter Lumber Company. Eventually, the engine was sold in 1938 to the Coal Processing Corporation in Dixiana, Virginia. It was there that she would finish out her years in revenue service. By the late 1950s, the line she was running on had long since been abandoned, and it was here that the aforementioned F. Norman Clark purchased the engine for himself in 1958. By 1963, the engine was restored and given the name Dixiano, or Dixie for short. Ever since then, it has seen nearly continuous operation on the RC and BT, and has since been declared a historical mechanical engineering landmark. With the passengers aboard, the engine is given the highball and cleared to depart. However, the crew is awkwardly reminded that they must set the switch for the main before they can do so. With the switch now set for the main, the train encounters some rather stubborn geese as they begin their ascent up Bear Mountain. Throughout the day, the train will make 2 more departures from Roaring Camp, one at noon and one at 1:30. As the train prepares for its 1:30 departure, we will take the opportunity to hop aboard and ride behind the Dixiana, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the sights and sounds as the engine fights its way up to Bear Mountain.
Welcome to look like little needles. It's also the same reason why the coastal redwood colony really exists about 2 to 10 miles from the coast of the Pacific. All has to do with the frost. Right spot on the ocean. But the excess fog will collect up on those years. Roots are your they live trees are actually the oldest living things on planet Earth. They've been alive in the dirt for 10,000 years. And how this works is kind of neat. You know, the tree only lives for 22 years. While we're here, let's take a look around here and we'll see a little burnt down pretzels.
I don't know what started the fire, but it was about
There will be train tracks in this entire continent, and possibly the world. Last trip took 3 attempts to take it up this hill. Let's see if we can do it in 2. Now we'll just move forward. America's only marsupial on this piece of property. I'm talking about the capital, humble, fabulous little oak possums. That's possums. No, we're gonna... February 22nd, 2020. Right before the end of the world. Talk about things that we're out riding on Bear Mountain. You're going to see it until you hear one short whistle blast. Once you stand and board these trains, after you hear that whistle.
At Bear Mountain, the engine makes a short stop once again to top off with water and allow passengers to stretch their legs. Shortly after this, the engine begins its descent back down to Roaring Camp.
Both sides of the train without having to stand, but only if you're paying attention. Really easy to miss. I'll try to warn you when we get a little closer, but for now, I gotta do a brake test. I always like to check the brakes before we start going down this mountain, and that's so we don't end up in Roaring Camp quicker than we intend to. So if you listen closely, you'll hear the engineer apply the brakes by releasing air out of the train. Listen close for the releasing air. There it is, hear it? Another short blast, see how we're slowing down? Engine 1, you have a good set. Take them off. Good release, high ball, running air, Bear Mountain. We got good brakes. That's a good thing. Especially on the steepest narrow gauge grade all of North America. Alright, so that view is coming up on the left hand. I did last night attempting to make mac and cheese. You may find at the bottom of those pots is a whole bunch of random minerals that used to be in the water that got left in the pot as the water evaporated out. The same thing occurs when you get a leaky faucet, you get all those weird mineral deposits underneath, right? Well, the same thing occurs with steam engine, especially after you boil away 700 gallons of water, like we just did going up and down this mountain once. It leaves a whole bunch of random minerals at the bottom of that locomotive boiler that messes up really bad. Instead of helping clean out all the minerals, the boiler is a good little very special valve. Feeling a little hungry or thirsty after your incredibly long journey on that short railroad, you may want to stop by Georgie's Cookhouse. They'll be open, offering the finest amusement park food and refreshments in all of Felton. And don't forget about that little museum I told you about outside the general store. It's worth checking out. Now, as we pull into the station here, we gotta line up this antique locomotive perfectly with that old water tower so we can fill it up with another 700 gallons of water. Stick around, you'll see your fireman's up. Fill it on up. Pretty classic 1880s view, don't see it every day. But because of this, we may actually move back and forth a couple of times before we actually stop.
With our return into Roaring Camp, this marks the end of the video. Thank you for sticking around to the end. If you have any constructive criticism or feedback, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. Thanks for watching.